Hello there, Famalam. Are we ready for Chapter 2? Almost. We're almost ready for Chapter 2. We're going to start Chapter 2 today, which is basically rhythm. Before I delve into that, I want to fix some things that I sort of missed in the last lesson. I made a new chart. I made a new nice chart found here on my website. Where is it? Click on the website, go to lessons, scroll down. Look at that. Look at that. All righty. I extended the chart a bit to include secondary and harmonic equivalents of the, let's try to make it a little bigger here. Secondary and harmonic equivalents of the intervals. I watched back the previous lesson. The interval stuff, I said a lot of good stuff about intervals, but I didn't really, because the chart wasn't complete and all that, I didn't really get the modifiers 100% out the way that I wanted to. I made some charts which I don't have to rehash all the stuff that I did in the last lesson, but if you take a look at these charts, they're pretty self-explanatory. It's a clearer way to understand intervals. So right here, I added a whole new column to the end for a secondary and a harmonic equivalent. You can see that just for example, the diminished fourth is equal to a major third. And if you go one enharmonic level deeper, a doubly augmented second is equal to a diminished fourth. It's a little much for friggin' chapter 1, right? That's why I kind of didn't delve into it, but chapter 1, it said intervals. Chapter 1 is the largest chapter because they wanted to kind of cover everything, all of the fundamentals. It's one of the thickest chapters. All the rest of the chapters are pretty thin, so hopefully the videos will be a little shorter too. But yeah. So the purpose of this is to... I also highlighted the major scale in the Roy G. Biv rainbow colors to help kind of solidify in your mind which intervals are part of the major scale. Then you can edit those at will and all that. The interval modifier chart, I reworked a little bit to make way more clearer. You can see over here that the perfect intervals are separate from the minor and the major intervals, but they're bracketed within the flowchart. So it should be kind of self-explanatory. You can go from an augmented back to either perfect or a minor major. You can see they're separate here. The flowchart explains it all here. Yeah. We'll just start at doubly diminished. If you raise it, it's diminished. If you raise it, it can be perfect. If you raise perfect, it'll go to augmented. If you raise augmented, it'll go to doubly augmented. Start at doubly diminished again. You start with something that's doubly diminished. You raise it, it will be diminished. If you raise that and go down here to minor, you're going to also have to raise it again to make it major. And then for major, you raise it to be augmented, and then raise it again for doubly augmented. And the whole thing works backwards as well. So this is kind of a more clear way than that other way. I wanted to replace that other one a long time ago. I just never got around to it. So this, I made it the other night. Looks a lot cleaner. I'm really happy with it. I'm really happy with how these charts turned out. The one thing that I want to mention about this basic first chart is this tritone right here. I kind of wanted to put the augmented fourth or diminished fifth where this tritone symbol is, but it could go into either area. So the tritone is special because it divides the entire chart in half. So that's symbolized by the two T's, honestly. It's a nice symbol. And it's also symbolized by the slash mark here. It could be either an augmented fourth or a diminished fifth, or a doubly augmented third and a doubly diminished sixth. So there's this column, row. This row is the only row with a slash mark style. It could be either or. And like I said in the last video, it's important to make the distinction between whether it's a augmented fourth or diminished fifth. So if you have a perfect fourth and you raise it, it will be an augmented fourth. If you have a perfect fifth and you diminish it, like a diminished chord, you would have a diminished fifth. Both of those are enharmonic with the tritone. So it's interesting, even the word tritone in and of itself is kind of like it's somewhat misleading, somewhat, because a tritone by itself is actually I would call it a augmented fourth, because the word tritone, tone meaning tone or semitone, it's a whole tone. There's tritones. There's 3 whole tones within this interval. So you start at do, which is a 1. You go to re, a major second, a whole tone up, and then another whole tone up is mi, or minor third, a major third, right? Do, re, mi, fi. That's so whatever. Do, re, mi, fi. Play better on the guitar. Let's remove the distortion from that. You can get a clearer sound. See the tritone? It's actually a augmented fourth, first and foremost, in most cases. But when you consider that diminished chords are freaking everywhere, I mean, diminished chords are 2 minor thirds. So it's actually a diminished fifth when it comes to diminished chords. All right, enough about that. And the last thing, there is no secondary enharmonic equivalent for the do or the octave. It's just not there. Maybe I'll find it later. Maybe I'll have an aha moment and I'll find it. But I was thinking about this for quite a while and there is none. Anyhow, I talk about this tritone that divides this chart into 2, the top half and then the bottom half. And you can invert the top half. Look at this new chart that I made. It's beautiful. It's truly beautiful. You can invert the top half onto the bottom half. And these are the inversions that I was talking about. Unison becomes an octave, minor second becomes major seventh, major second becomes minor seventh, minor third becomes major sixth, major third becomes minor sixth, perfect fourth becomes perfect fifth, and the tritone stays a tritone. I wanted to write augmented fourth becomes diminished fifth, because that's true. Even according to the inversion rules that I was talking about. I made a little nice chart super easy to understand here. Anytime you want to invert, meaning take something from one octave and place it below. For example, if you had this perfect fifth and you didn't want it to be a perfect fifth, you wanted it to be a perfect fourth. You wanted to take this note. Do, so, and bring the so, down an octave to the other so. Anytime you'd want to invert that, you can follow these rules. And that's going to come up pretty heavy when it comes to part writing. When you have something that's out of the octave, or even just melody writing. When you're coming up with a melody, it's just kind of like, I know that was a shitty-ass melody, but sometimes in a melody, you want to take a note and put it down an octave. And what that does to your part writing is it makes you have to consider the different interval. So now you're not thinking of like a major third. You're thinking of a minor sixth. Now all of a sudden you're playing with sixths instead of thirds. So, these are the rules. Major becomes minor, the perfect stays perfect, the diminished becomes augmented, and the doubly diminished becomes doubly augmented. Pretty straightforward. Not much to explain there. Then there's the rule of nines for the other part of the interval. Anytime you're thinking about inverting an interval, just remember that the two intervals have to add 9. The unison to the octave, the 1 to the 8, equals 9. The 2 to the 7, the second becomes a seventh, equals 9. The third to the 6th equals 9. The 4th to the 5th equals 9. Just like I said about the augmented 4th to the diminished 5th, augmented 4th to the diminished 5th follows both of those rules. Very simple. Once you wrap your head around, maybe spend time with it for like a week, I guarantee it'll be just like that. It'll be super fast, super easy for your brain to recognize this stuff. I also included the half steps, which they were there from the beginning, but I wanted to leave them in there because it does help, especially for guitarists. Some pianists also need a little bit of memory jog. It's like, how many half steps? I know for guitar, the 5 and the 7. The 5 and the 7 were like so ingrained into my brain from reading tabs forever. 5 and the 7 had something special. It was 0, 5, 7, and 12. Almost every song had something to do with 0, 5, 7, and 12. Every single song. So seeing this stuff and realizing that 12 to 7 and 0 to 5 are like similar, it helps. All right. And then I also extended the inversion chart. So up here, I only included the intervals. Down here, I included the solfege and the half steps. And then even further, I included the entire chart with the enharmonics. And it's actually pretty freaking cool how this works out. Even the enharmonic and the secondary enharmonic equivalents follow these rules, these inversion rules. Minor becomes major, doubly diminished becomes doubly augmented, 2 to 7 equals 9, da 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 da. Check this out. Pick any interval. Let's pick perfect fourth at random. The enharmonic equivalent is an augmented third. So without even looking at the other side, the inversion to the augmented third should be a diminished sixth. Let's check it on the chart. Perfect fourth is inverted to a perfect fifth, which is also, oh, look at that, a diminished sixth. Look at that. and pick another one at random. So let's go with re, major second, and let's use the enharmonic equivalent to that as well. Diminished third. Without even looking at it, it should be, they're very similar. Without even looking at it, I should know that all I have to do is change the diminished to the augmented, and then follow the rule of nines. For 3, you get 6. So it should be the inversion of a diminished third is an augmented sixth. Am I right? Check it on the chart. Oh, look at that. It's an augmented sixth. Look at that. Ain't that diddly dandy? Let's take one lower. Let's take a minor second. Why not? A minor second. The equivalent to, let's take the secondary harmonic equivalent to check all this stuff. A doubly diminished third is equal to what inversion? Well, up here on the chart here, doubly diminished is inverted to doubly augmented, and a third inverts to a sixth. Look at that. So let's check it all the way over here on the other side of the chart. A doubly augmented sixth. Oh my goodness gracious, look at that. How awesome is that? How wonderful is that? Anyhow, so that's the charts. I think it's awesome. Yeah. The unison, I believe, is the only one that doesn't necessarily invert. It just stays unison, like with the enharmonic equivalents, but whatever. Pretty easy to remember. All the other ones, it helps out. The interesting one that I saw, it kind of led me to start doing this, was seeing the tritone go from an augmented fourth and a diminished fifth to a doubly augmented third and a doubly diminished sixth. That was in the original chart, I believe, as well. And when I saw that, I said, wait a minute, 4 to 3, 5 to 6? Wait a minute. Augmented to doubly augmented? Diminished to doubly diminished? And it's like, yeah, all those rules, they still work. It's awesome. So like I said before in the first lesson, whoever devised this interval scheme, so clever, so ingenious. I love it. What else can I say about this? I want to say that chords can also be perfect minor or major or diminished or augmented or doubly diminished or doubly augmented, but that's for like another topic. Let's see. Do I have any other things that I need to convey? Nope, that's about it. Let's move on. Just move on to chapter 2. Elements of rhythm. I'd like to show where we are in the kind of series. So we just kind of dealt with pitch, which is the y-axis. Let's see, where's the paint icon here? There we go, paint. So we just dealt with pitch. And pitch is kind of the y-axis. And now we're going to deal with rhythm. Rhythm. Pitch. And the reason they're kind of doing this, they're kind of building something for us. They're building something for us according to their little their game plan here. So first is pitch, then next is rhythm. Then they're going to teach us triads and seventh chords, which is kind of nuts. Then they're going to, out of these, build the X and the Y axis together to make diatonic chord scales. They show you a melody, and they show you chords, kinda. And then they show you how to make chords across a scale, which is somewhat of a melody, somewhat. It's interesting stuff. It's really interesting stuff. I'll try to draw it out for what they're trying to do. First, they show us this. Boop, 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 boop. And then they show us this. Doop, 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 doop. Make little flags on these. We're in 4/8 time right now. And then they show us this. Boop, 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 boop. 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 See what they're doing? They're building upon what they're teaching you in the previous chapter. All right. Now that we understand where we're at, let us finally begin. Only 20 minutes in. Let us finally begin with rhythm. Now, rhythm, man, it's a shame that this chapter is so short, but all they're doing here, and I'm going to try to hold myself back, something that my teacher had to do a whole bunch of times. He had to try to reel himself in, because the passion from the music will let us ramble forever. There's just so many different avenues that you can travel within rhythm. Rhythm can be a whole book by itself. But again, this is just chapter 2. They're just trying to show us some fundamentals and definitions and trying to kind of iron out some wrinkles in your brain that you may have had with rhythm before. Because everybody understands basic rhythm, but they want to try to categorize it into some certain, files and folders inside your head. So you're not lumping together two different rhythms or whatever. They want to try to make sure that you're writing rhythms correctly. You're not obscuring the beat and all that stuff. So we dive right in. The rhythm is the time aspect of music. Rhythm is time. It's the x-axis. X-axis. Rhythm. Time. They try to show us here. You can see all that. I'll just write it on the thing. They try to show us the equivalent of notes. So they show us that a whole note is equal to 2 half notes, and that's equal to 4 quarter notes, and that's equal to 8 eighth notes. And then that's equal to, you guessed it, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15, 16. 16 16th notes. Crazy stuff here, right? Something that I didn't know was that there exists something called a breve. Breve? It's essentially 2 whole notes equals a breve. And it's written as kind of like a square. I'll actually try to show you it here. Brave. Can you see it there? It's all blurry. I'll just Google it for you. Rave music. There it is. There she blows. See, it's kind of just like a square. Or you could see it like this, but it's not as defined like this. The whole note with the two lines on each side, sometimes that's hard to kind of see, especially when you're reading fast. I've seen it rarely like this. I've also seen it like this, but it's more clear when I see it like this, as a square, rectangle, whatever you want to call it. There also exists something called a brave rest. So, brave rest music. Let's see what ultimatemusictheory.com shows. That's cool. They teach you how to draw and all that. Get out of here with your scams. A brave rest is like, it's a square. It's just a dark square. I think I've seen it, if I'm not mistaken, as a little X. It's like a little teeny tiny X. Might be wrong, but anyway. So that's about it. I mean, I do want to say that it goes beyond 16th notes. So this is half notes, fourth notes, eighth notes, 16th notes. I've seen 32nd notes. Oh, sorry, these have to have flags on them. Sorry, my bad. 32nd notes have 3 flags on them. That's really confusing, especially when you see all these damn lines. It's really annoying to write. 64th notes, I've seen those, and even 128th notes. It's just ridiculous when you get to that point. Like, just change the damn meter, whatever. When you get to these levels of like complexity, the 32nd notes, I've seen people go like this: 1, 2, 3, 4, and then they'll go 3 flags, and then they'll give it a space. 1, 2, 3, 4, 1, 2. So they'll leave like a space. Not really a space, but in between the 4th and the 5th note, they will not link the flags together, just for visual purposes, so that when you're seeing it with your eyes, it's not like hard to read. Another thing that I've seen was when you have all these notes like this, I've seen them just be like they won't even bother writing in. They won't even bother writing in either the correct amount of flags when there's like 128th notes, like when there's like so many different flags, whatever. Like there's like so many different flags. This one has 3 flags, 4 flags, 5 flags. Like 5 flags? Like what in the hell? Like who's going to sit there and draw 128 notes in a measure? So what I've seen, they just do like the first 4, and they'll do it correctly. And then they'll just kind of like either do like one line for the rest of them and put the word sim for simile, similar, or whatever. I've seen them just put like a line that's really thick after this one. I've seen them, they just put a line with like a squiggle or like a line going through it to signify like, hey, we're too lazy to write out 128 damn notes. So just be aware that notes their names, their division names are like super self-explanatory, and it is totally okay to not want to write out 128 damn notes. Ugh, that's ridiculous. I've not seen a lot of classical music go past like 16 or 32, really. And even with 32, it's rare. They just want to have like a specific type of what's called non-chord tone. They'll only use it in specific instances where there's like one little grace note, they call it, like one little appoggiatura, like one little note that needs a specific oomph. Most of the time it stops at 16. Most of the time it stops at 16. All right? 16 is good enough. Good enough. And when you're writing, brother, eighth notes are good enough. Quarter notes are plenty, okay? When you're writing like blueprints of music and stuff, brother, quarter notes convey the message well. And any further than that, you can use eighth notes, maybe 16th notes. 16th notes are important. But man, when you get into 16th notes, you're getting out of the blueprint of writing and you're getting more into the details. The fine phrasing aspects of how you want a melody to be played. Oftentimes, you're not going to see a chord change from 16th note to 16th note. No. 16th notes oftentimes are just non-chord tones. They're just a scale leading from one note to a next. They're just like spicy notes. You know, they're not part of the main chord. Even eighth notes, when you consider the harmonic progression, when you consider moving from one chord to the next, you're not going to move 1, 2, 3, 4, like 1 tate, 2 tate, 3 tate, 4 tate. No. It's going to be like 1 tate, 2 tate, 3 tate, 4 tate. 1 tate, 2 tate, 3 tate, 4. It's not going to be this like, it's going to be one chord per beat, usually at the most. If they move a chord off of these beats, it's probably just to accent it a little bit on the eighth note or whatever. On the anacrusis, they call it an anacrusis when it's on the upbeat. Most of the times, chords change on the downbeat. And even then, you can make it simpler. Even then, chords rarely change on every single downbeat. Sometimes they only have 2 chords per bar. I've seen 1 chord per bar. 1 chord per measure. The chords only change every whole note. 1 chord per bar. And even then, I've seen chords not change in 2 bars. Usually it's just the same chord for 2 bars. One, two, three, four, 2, 2, 3, 4. 1, 2, 3, 4, 2, 2, 3, 4. 1, 2, 3, 4, 2, 2, 3, 4. 2, 2, 3, 4, 2, 2, 3, 4. 1, 2, 3, 4, 2, 2, 3, 4. 1, 2, 3, 4, 2, 2, 3, 4. That's why I brought up the Brave. Because it's every 0.5, I guess, every 2 bars. This thing takes up 2 bars. Because a lot of times, especially with pop music, especially with this new music that's just like feel-good music, man, it's like the chords don't change frequently. They change every 2 bars. You know, all this stuff past eighth notes and beyond, it's just details. And when you get to 32nd notes, it is like super fine microscopic details. So, those are what I consider the levels of scopes, I guess. Let's kind of take all this, Control A, and move it off to the side. I want to say that these from braves to quarter notes are kind of like level 1. From 8th notes to 16th notes, kind of, are like level 2. And beyond is level 3. In terms of like zoom and detail, these are like the levels. This can kind of, the level 2 is kind of subjective, but that's about where I've seen it. Chords typically only change per beat. Okay? Okay. That's enough of that. I guess they want me to, all right. They also want me to show you what a rest looks like. So again, we got the brave. So a rest is like a filled-in small brave that extends from one line to the next line. This is important that it fills in the line. But really, you're not going to use a brave like that, dude. They just put in rests. And they just put in whole notes with a tie. Or even they'll just put in something like this, 2. They'll write the number 2 in the middle of the bars. It's so lazy how they just get rid of all this stuff. Anyhow. We got the whole note. The whole note becomes a whole rest. Now this whole rest is found. When it's found, it doesn't touch the line underneath. It's very similar to a half rest. A half rest is like an upside down whole rest. There's a trick to these two. I'll show you in a bit. It's pretty elementary. And there's an 8th note. My bad. A quarter note. And a quarter note corresponds to a quarter rest, which I think of as a Z on top of a C. That's what it looks like to me. A little lightning bolt Z on a C. Z, C. Just like that. 8th note is where things start to change a little bit. The 8th note has one flag on it, and you'll see the rest kind of looks like just a solo flag post, like a worn out solo flag post in the wind. Kind of looks like a number 7 to me with a little circly thing. A little circly dot right there on the end of the 7. And further on from there, from 8th notes, this is why I think they do this intentionally. They do these detailed levels. This is why I think they do it intentionally. They're trying to mark to you also the details of the rests and the notes. So here, when it changes, all the rest of these notes, from 8th note to 16th notes with 2 flags, to 32nd notes with 3 flags, to 64th notes with 4 flags. Oops, 4 flags. All just have a corresponding rest that looks like a 7 with two little flags. Or 3 little flags. Or 4 little flags. And this kind of system where we're starting right here on the 8th note and beyond. You start to have flags. That lets me know that that's like the detailed level. That's when we're starting to get into the detailed level of writing rhythms, where the rhythms themselves are only important when it comes to like a melodic context, or like when it comes to like a specific, an idea, like a detailed phrase. You're getting into the details of the phrase. Up here, when you're in half notes and whole notes, that stuff is like zoomed out. You're on a more blueprint type level when you're zoomed out and looking at just whole notes and half notes. That's why the markings are similar. And I believe with quarter notes, they're unique because they're meant to show exactly where the beat is. It's the only one that's like that to let you know where the beat is. You know what I'm saying? Typically we're in 4/4, like common time. It's the most common time. That's why they call it common time. That's why they use these unique rests. So, I'm not liking this flickering. Might have been when I dropped the camera. So that's kind of my theory on why they use this the way they do. And the last trick that I'll show you is the pneumatic device, the little wording device that my high school teacher taught me for, shout out to Joseph Downs, high school guitar, woo, Southeast. We would even make fun of this in high school, but it turns out it became super duper helpful. The symbol, the symbol for the whole note and the half note kind of looks like a top hat, right? It looks like a little top hat. And when the hat's upside down, it has a hole in it. It's that simple. And when the hat is right side up, hat rhymes with half. It's literally that simple. A whole note has a hole in it. It's a hat with a hole in it for a whole note. The half note looks like a hat. That's how you remember the difference between those two. That's about it. All right, what do they want me to talk about next? Those durational symbols. Now they want to talk about dots and ties. So dots and ties. And then they just abandon it completely. That's funny. They abandon that idea completely. All right. So a dot, as anybody knows, will extend a note. It extends a note's time duration value by 1/2. So if we have a whole note with a dot next to it, that's equal to a whole note plus a half note. But they ain't going to write a little plus mark. They would write it as a tie. That's where the tie comes in. So if you got a half note with the dot next to it, that's going to be the same as a half note tied to half of the half note, which is a half of a half is a quarter note. Now we're getting somewhere. Now we are getting somewhere, boys. Now we're getting somewhere. Cool part about this is you can actually put a dot on the dot. You can have a half note with a double dot. They call it a double dotted rhythm. A double dotted half note. Now, what in the F is that? The dot, technically, the dot increases the duration of anything that comes before the dot by half. So what this means is the dot is not increasing both the dot and the half, the dot and the half note. The dot is not increasing this altogether. No. The dot is only increasing the dot. So the first dot increases the half note by half, and then the second dot increases the dot by half. So, if we got this half note, and it's dotted, single dot, we'll take care of the first dot first. It'll look like this, like we said before up here. A half note with a quarter note attached to it. And to account for the next dot, it's almost like we just put a dot on the quarter note. See what's happening there? So only the quarter note gets extended. It gets tied to, what's half of a quarter? An eighth. My bad, that's a 16th. An eighth. So this value is really interesting. It'll come into play way later, maybe. Maybe we'll take a look at some examples. But it's important that you know this exists. This double dot exists. And just to fill in the kind of mental whatever. So if you're trying to put these rhythms, put these durations into an actual measure, this first with the whole note, the dotted whole note, it's going to take up a bar and a half. A whole note and a half note. So that means there needs to be a half rest. So a half rest exists to complete the second bar. Over here, on the next example, I'm going to do this for the next few examples. To complete the measure, my bad, I should have stated a measure is typically in 4/4 time. We're going to deal with 4/4 time for right now. So if this is in 4/4 as well, and you got a half note, and it's tied to a quarter note, well, you still need one more beat. That's 1, 2, tied to 3, and 4. You still need one more beat. So to complete this bar, you'd need quarter rest. Now this is where the tricky stuff comes in. It's not that tricky, but it's something to think about. If you got a double dotted note, if you got a double dotted note next to a rest, you might be redneck. No. If you have a double dotted half note, think about where the rest is going to occur. It's tied to a quarter note. And then the quarter note is tied to an eighth note. Well, how many beats are left in the 4/4 measure? That's telling me that it's got 1, 2 beats are taken care of, tied to a third beat that's taken care of, and then the third beat is tied to a half of a beat that's taken care of. So this is occurring on the fourth beat. The doubled dot is occurring on beat 4. So this has got 1 and 2 taken care of, and then the quarter note occurs on beat 3, and then the eighth note occurs on beat 4. So that means there's still half of a beat left, which means you need one of them eighth rests. So this double dot, pain in the ass it is. It truly is a pain in the ass. This double dot, when you're writing measures like this, if it's a double dotted half note, you go 2 levels down. The half note with the dot goes 1 level down. The half note with 2 dots goes 2 levels down. That's instantly how you know what is needed to complete the duration when you have a double dotted note. So this double dotted note is going to require an additional eighth something, eighth note or eighth rest to complete its filling out of the measure or of its implied duration. If you have, that's never going to get out of my head now. If you have a double dotted quarter note, let's use the rules that we established. You go 2 levels down, eighth note, 16th note. You're going to need a 16th note to fill that in and make that worth a half note. That's how you know how to evenly block, like Legos, how to evenly block out the rhythms. All right, that's a little deep, but the point is that these double dots, as soon as you see a double dot, you should instantly be thinking, oh shit, this is some detailed stuff. This is like, it's not that it's not necessary, but when you're thinking about just zooming out, pulling your face out of the page, and just looking at the structure of how the harmonic changes are occurring, because remember what I said? Typically, the harmonic changes only occur on half notes, whole notes. Sometimes they don't occur for 2 whole measures. When you see this double dot, you should know that it's not exactly necessary for the harmonic structure of a piece. Okay? Even a dot. You can see sometimes chords will change on a dot. For example, if you have a 4/4 bar, and this is kind of like a compound rhythm, which I'll show in a second, and you have a dotted quarter, and then a quarter. So to play that out, it's kind of like, it's 3 beats 3 beats, and then 2 beats. Technically, this should be 4/8. Whatever, who gives a shit? So when you hear rhythms like that, 1 2 3 2 2 3 1 2 1 2 3 2 2 3 1 1 2 3 2 2 3 1 2 1 2 3 2 2 3 1 2. You see? When you have rhythms like that, sometimes you will change on the dotted rhythm. You get it? Sometimes the dot is detailed enough for the harmonic changes to be important. Just like I said up here. Up here, when you get to like eighth notes, it's kind of subjective, right? These are eighth notes down here. It's kind of subjective on how far away you're zoomed in or out. But typically, they can't. That's like the margin where notes start to not become important anymore. The smaller the note values, they're not as important when it comes to the harmonic structure. And I know people are, this is actually wrong, kind of. I know people are like, you shouldn't write it like that. Classical musicians are like, you shouldn't write it like that. Which they're kind of right, but they're also kind of wrong. We'll talk about that. We'll talk about that later when we talk about compound rhythms and all that. We'll talk about it right now. So for a 4, if you have a 4/4 and you have this rhythm, typically they want you to write it like this. They want you to group every 2 notes to show exactly what the beat is. Sometimes, if you have this rhythm where it's 3, 3, and 2, they don't even want you to call it 4/4. They want you to call it some other stuff, like 6 + 2 / 8. It's nuts. It's bananas. Realistically, I don't do that. I call it 4/4. That's just me. And then I beam it the way I beam it. But technically, the way that they're teaching you here, because remember, they teach you the rules, and then they teach you how and why to break those rules correctly. So here, they want you to take these notes and tie them, kind of. So if I were to tie these out, now, it's not exactly similar to the one above, but it's similar to the one above that. So if I have a rhythm like, but the chords are ringing out. When you have the rhythm like that, da, 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 1 and 4, 1 and 4, 1, take 4, 1, take 4. They want you to beam these in such a way that you're not obscuring the beat. So they wouldn't want you to necessarily write it like this first or second one, or even the third one. They'd want you to write it out like this. Which is kind of laborious, as you can see me doing it now. They will take this first one and tie it, and then they'll take this second one and tie it. See that? So it's kind of going ba, 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 4, 1, and 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 4. And even then, you see, this is why they say teach you how to break the rules, or teach you the rules and then teach you how to break them. I don't like this. I don't like that at all. I actually hate that, because what this does is they're meaning to show you, they're meaning to not obscure the beat in a 4/4 time signature. So they're showing you where 1 is, where 2 is. That 1 looks like a 2. They're showing you where 1 is, where 2 is, where 3 is, and where 4 is. But are you really feeling it like that? Are you really, art thou feeling it now, Mr. Krabs? Are you really feeling it like that? No, you ain't feeling it like that. You're feeling it like the first one, or the second one. They'll tell you that the first and the second one are wrong. I don't think so. Later, they'll tell you they're right. The way that you beam things, is incredibly important. You don't want to obscure the beat. You want to show your intent with how you beam things, regardless of the time signature. Regardless of where they tell you that you should have 4 beats per measure, and you have to outline the 1, the 2, the 3, and the 4. No, that's not how you read, okay? All right. A grammar analogy. If you say, they ran out of apples, they ran out of apples. Now, would you capitalize apples? They ran out of apples? They ran out of apples. Period. They ran out of apples. They ran out of apples? Apples. This is incorrect, because you'd want to lowercase the apples. That's what they'll tell you. But what if apples was the loudest word? What if you said, they ran out of apples? In text, if in any type of text format, even in books, you might find apples italicized with an exclamation point if you're shouting it like that. They ran out of apples? If you put an inflection on apples, or even, they ran out of apples. You might even uppercase the whole damn thing. They'll tell you that you cannot italicize words in a sentence. You cannot have uppercase letters in an entire word. That's incorrect. But if I just write apples in all lowercase, they ran out of apples. That might not be my intent. That's not the intent or the rhythm that I'm trying to imply. They ran out of apples. No, they ran out of apples. You might be mad about it. You might be trying to emphasize that particular beat, that particular word. So, let's continue with the book. I think the apples analogy is truly We're comparing apples to oranges. This is me getting off the rails now. Let's get back on the rails. The next page in the book talks about beat and tempo. Now, beat and tempo. I'm going to put my guitar down for a sec. Beat and tempo. They give you this nice little charty chart here. I really don't want to talk about all this stuff. They give you this chart that shows you the different Italian, English, German, and French names for the tempos. What do you call them? The speeds. So the beat is the beat. The beat is not how fast something is. It's kind of funny when people misnomer, so they call something upbeat or downbeat. It makes no sense. Like, they'll call a song upbeat. But in music, when you say the downbeat, you're talking about the one. It's not really a speed downbeat. Or the upbeat, when you talk about an upbeat in music, you're talking about an anacrusis, the te, the and of a beat. Even though regular folk will call songs upbeat when they're happy or when they're fast. Now we get into territory that's just subjective over here, and while it's subjective, it is important to know what it is. So the beat is not how fast something is. Tempo is how fast something is. Tempo, I believe, means time. Just straight up translates to time. It's the speed or the rate of the beat. How often the beat occurs. The beat in modern days is measured in beats per minute. It's compared to the second, the clock ticking second. No fucking way. Oh man, I just thought my microphone was off for a second, and I was talking for about an hour without a microphone. No, we good, boys. We good. The beat it might be worth it to talk about some of these Italian words, because you do see them a lot. All right. We'll start from the slowest and go to the fastest. Tempo. This is on tempo. Italian words for speed. All right. We're going to go from slowest to fastest. And I'm not going to include all the English words, the German words, French words. You'll find them, but it's like, y'all can either just look this stuff up, because they give you a table of words, but man, there's like an unlimited amount of words that I've seen. It's way more than these words that they give you. I'll give you the Italian ones because I've seen them the most. Grave. Or grave. They'll use largo for slow. Lento. I've seen lento before, less common. Adagio. Adagio for strings. Adagio is a common one. That's one to remember. Andante. Andante is like, when I was in high school, they'd teach me for guitar music. Andante is a nice walking pace. That's how they would compare all this stuff. All these words, they'd compare it to a walking pace. How fast or slow you'd walk. And andante was at your own pace. At a nice, medium pace. Moderato. That's something that I've seen quite a bit, and that means at a moderate pace. So a little bit picked up with an intent. Allegretto. Allegretto. Allegretto is like kind of fast. Like allegretto means with a purpose. Like you walking to get somewhere. Kind of fast. Actually, that was kind of more allegro, but whatever. Allegro, I've seen this a bunch of times. Allegro means like fast, like straight up. Like get your heart rate up. Dun, 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 dun. Almost running. Vivace. I think it's like that. Vivace? Vivace with an E. Vivace, the root word of vivace is life. Viva, means life. And life, vivace, it means lively. Like straight up, like faster than fast. Like energetic, happy, like celebrating, like the way that people would dance quickly at a pace that would make their heart rate go up. So allegro is almost running. Oops. Andante is walking. Adagio is like kind of just dragging along. And over here, grave, someone just died and you are depressed. You are depressed and you are just like dragging your feet like way harder than adagio. You are just stepping like so slow, like you have zero purpose. All right. So you got depressed, you drag, you're walking, you're almost running, you're lively, dancing, I would say, dancing. And the final one is presto. I've seen this one a bunch of times too. The way I remember presto is musicians. They say presto for like, boom, there it is. Presto is freaking fast, like too fast. Like that is hard to play. Too fast. Now y'all can Google all the proper BPMs for all this stuff or whatever. And even when you Google it, they won't give you a straight answer. They'll give you a range. They'll give you a tempo like from 66 to 72. They won't really give you a proper tempo. The book goes on to say that there was some dude who pushed for the metronome. What's his name? Johnny Manziel? Johann Malzel. And they even have the symbol that you'll see. It'll be called MM equals, instead of seeing presto or whatever the hell. And sometimes right next to seeing presto or allegro or whatever the hell, they'll put the actual beats per minute. And then they'll say the quarter note equals, I don't know, 80 BPM, something like that. Quarter note equals 80. Just like that. Now this confuses the hell out of me because there's MM and then there's also a lowercase mm. Hey, and this is for measure. This means measure. I forgot what it actually stands for, but the lowercase mm stands for measure. The uppercase mm, I guess, stands for, what does it say here? Malzel's metronome. Whatever. So apparently this guy didn't even invent the metronome. It says he just widely promoted the device in the early 19th century. So it wasn't even that long ago. Wasn't even that long ago. The reason I don't enjoy using these words, they have their importance, these Italian words and whatever. You're German and you're French and you're English, blah, blah, blah. It's just so lame. Like, in English, check out the ones they use in English. Solemn, broad, slow, moderately slow, moderate, moderately fast, fast, lively, and very fast. Like if you're going to have those words, like why not just use the English words? Like why not just use the words that are in your language? I'm sure Arabic has all of their own words. But then again, why use those words at all if it's going to be played by people around the world now? Like it's getting to the point where music is shared around the world. And even back then, music was shared around the world. The primary three languages way back then were Italian, German, and French. English was still kind of in the works. It was there, but they typically use Italian, German, and French. Actually, I think German came later. But Italian and French, and then German came. But Italian was the big one. Italian was I don't know why all these Spanish people were making all this music, but they made damn good music. They must have been very, very emotional when they were making it. So all these words started sticking. And that's why people had to memorize all these words across all these different languages, because the metronome wasn't invented yet. Well, damn it, the metronome is invented, and I'll be damned if I'm about to memorize all these words. I mean, it's nice. It teaches you different languages. But, dude, you can go on your phone and pick up I'm sure I got an app. Tap Tempo. I have like 3 different apps. Tap Tempo, Metronome. You can go online right now. Go into Google and type in online metronome. Freaking Google, I didn't even know this. Google has a metronome for you. You can just put it in Google metronome and have it be probably pretty damn close. That's crazy. It even has a little visual thing. You see that? It even has a visual blinking indicator. Isn't that crazy? Like, this is even better than a metronome that you'd have to buy and calibrate and all that crap. Metronome online, free metronome. Look at that. It's online. The one I use is actually, it's not really a metronome, but Tap Tempo. I think it's .io, something like that. Taptempo.io. This is what I use to figure out beats. And all you got to do is click or hit a button. It's that simple. I'm at 120 right now. Freaking every single digital audio workstation has one. I got a tap tempo here. Bop, 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 bop. Let's keep doing it. Look at that. Average of 117. Average divided by 2 is 159. Accuracy, it tells you your accuracy. Like, what in the hell? Up here even, we got in the corner here, I don't know if you could see it on the screen, but up here we got a little BPM thing too. BPM, and it even, if you hover over it, it allows me to tap the BPM. Isn't that crazy? So, the point I'm trying to make is that these freaking words are outdated, man. It was cool way back in the day when you didn't have like a thing. But now, it's almost frustrating to use these words because they're so vague with their like range that you'll find 2 different pieces be played at 2 almost completely different tempos. If you write something and you put this word in there, you're basically saying, hey, it doesn't matter exactly how fast you play it to the world, because there's going to be different speeds of these songs. Which is fine. You know, songs are meant to have emotion and be interpreted in different ways. But if you write something with the intent to have it at a certain speed, Why would you not go with the exact BPM? We have so many tools. We have so many tools. We have so many tools devoted specifically to clock things. The computer itself is a giant clock. Everybody has a giant clock. That's funny. Everybody has a clock. And that's actually kind of dark. Everybody has a clock, and it's ticking. Boy, it is ticking. Our clocks are ticking. So, that's what I'm trying to kind of convey to you guys. Everybody has a clock. Everybody has a phone nowadays, which completely defeats the purpose of all these tempo markings. It was cool back in the day when you needed to have word of mouth and all that. But now, just use the damn BPM. There's no excuse for not being able to type in taptempo.io for like 2 seconds and find out your intended beat and then write that on a score. That's even faster than learning Italian, learning German, learning French, trying to translate it and then writing out the whole word, which then isn't even accurate. It's not even an accurate, definite tempo. If you want a range of tempo, you could just find the tempo that you're playing at, and then put a range, plus and minus 10 BPM or whatever. All right, enough of my ranting. Hopefully I'll finish this before hour 2. Off of tempo, we're going to go to meter. And meter in this section of meter, they're trying to get you to understand that in this section of meter, just the basics. Oh, look at that. They even go into the little lowercase mm. It's cool that I brought that up. So they don't tell you what it's defined as, but I think it's defined as meter measure. I could be wrong, but the meter is defined by the measure. So every measure, you have a certain amount of beats of a certain amount of notes. So this meter, they call it quadruple. Now, they go on to define that there's only like 3 types of meter. There's duple, triple, and quadruple. The duple obviously has two notes in it. So it's like 2-4 or 2-2, for example. The triple typically has like a 3 or sometimes a 6 on the top. Let's say 3-4 or 6-4, whatever. A quadruple has some multiple of 4. Beginning with 4, it could be 8, it could be 12, I think. Yeah. So a duple has 2 beats per measure. A triple has 3 beats per measure. And a quadruple has 4 beats per measure. And you might be saying, well, Sonamor, duple is very similar to quadruple. Yes, absolutely, you are correct. It is extremely similar, and people will often interchange quadruple for duple. but they want to just go on. They list off the metric accent patterns. So the accents here would be strong, weak. For triple, it's typically strong, weak, weak. For quadruple, it would be strong, weak, less strong, weak. I'll demonstrate on the guitar. If you think about Duple, they're trying to get you to feel like a march. Oops, why is it all distorted? They're trying to get you to feel like a march. So strong, weak, strong, weak. Boom, boom, boom. For triple, it's typically strong, weak, weak, strong, weak, weak, strong, weak, weak. That's like a waltz. For quadruple, there is a distinction. So it's strong, weak, less strong, weak. While I don't totally agree with all that because it's not defined enough, the basic of it is true. The basics of strong and weak is very true here. I would go on to put an asterisk on the third. So they have strong and less strong, but they don't have weak and less weak. I would say that in the triple meter, the weak beat could be less weak. Because typically, the quote-unquote weak beat preceding the strong beat on the one is emphasized. One, dun, 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 dun. It's not necessarily always true. You see what I'm saying? And the quadruple, for the quadruple meter, the strong and the less strong, I don't want to say that's not true, but when you hear house music with a kick and a snare, boom, 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 some people would say that the snare is stronger than the kick, depending on what kind of speakers you have. Because the snare really hits, man. The kick leaves room. It leaves room for all of the harmonic activity above it. The kick is so low in the frequency, it's in the melodic range, that it leaves room for everything above it. But man, when you hear a snare hit, that snare is like the strongest beat in the bar, man. Boom, ka, boom, ka, boom, ka, boom, ting, ka, ting, boom, ting, ka, ting, boom, ting, ka. Boots and cats and boots and cats. And the weak beats, I think, in my opinion, The second beat could also be less weak. The second weak beat. So it's strong, weak, less weak. Dun, 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 dun. It's a little subjective, and obviously not every piece of music will adhere to that exact pattern. Sometimes in triple meters, you'll have strong, weak, less weak, strong, weak, less weak, strong, weak, less weak. And I'm just finding out now that less weak is a misnomer, because if something is less weak, then that means it's stronger, right? It would have to be more weak. Whatever, y'all know what I mean. But yes, what they're saying is true. What they're trying to show you is that quadruple meter has two accents. One of them is really accented, and one of them is just kind of accented. In the triple meter, the first beat is accented. On the duple meter, the first beat is accented. You feel? They go on to say that waltzes are always in triple meter, and a lot of popular songs like Amazing Grace and Scarborough Fair are in triple meter as well. They want you to hear it in your head. They want to give you common songs to stick with your understanding of triple meter. So Amazing Grace. Amazing Grace, how sweet the sound. Dun, 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 1, 2, 3, 4, 2, 2, 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3, 1. It's in a triple meter when you think about it. Then they throw you a little curveball. Funny curveball. They throw you a curveball by saying that the song like Take Me Out to the Ball Game is kind of both. It's a duple or it could be a triple, depending on how you notate it. So if you sing the song Take Me Out to the Ball Game, take me out to the ball game, take me out to the crowd, da 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 da, ba da 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 da. You could emphasize bum 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 2 1 2 1 2 1 2 1 2. Or you could emphasize the triplets. Take me out to the ball game. Take me out to the crowd. So it could either be in a duple with little eighth notes here, or it could be in a triple. 1, 2, 3, 2, 2, 3. Excuse me, 1, 2, 3, 2, 2, 3, 4, 2, 3, 5, 2, 3. 1, 2, 3, 2, 2, 3, 4, 2, 3, blah. I still need a refresher on all this stuff. 1, 2, 3, 2, 2, 3, 3, 2, 3, 4, 2, 3. It could be written as quadruple. It's really all in how you notate it. It's how you notate it. That's why they call Take Me Out to the Ball Game ambiguous. So this could be in like a 2 kind of with triplets. They're triplets. 2, 4, technically, whatever. It could be in a 6/8, because there's 6/8 notes. It could be in a 12/8. It's all about how you want to notate it. All right? It really is a curveball that take me out to the ball game. Some examples they want you to sing aloud in the self-test and figure out whether they're duple, triple, or quadruple are Silent Night, Jingle Bells, America the Beautiful, 76 Trombones, I never heard of that one, and Home on the Range. So these are really actually tough examples. It is kind of up to interpretation. Silent night, night, night. Holy night, night, night. Da 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 da. This is calm. Ball down 3, 4, 5, 6. Bright 1, 2, 3, 5, 6. It's kind of in a triple. Kind of. Jingle bells, Batman smells, Robin laid an egg. That one's definitely in a duple or quadruple. America, dum bum bum bum. That one's in a duple for sure. Dun 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 dun. That's definitely duple. I don't know what 76 Trombones is. Home, home on the range, where the deer the antelope play. That's probably in a triple. You kind of look at it as a big quadruple, but I think they're trying to get us to realize it's a triple. Here's where the money starts happening. The division of the beat. They want you to understand that there's a simple type of beat and a compound type of beat. Which is essentially, it's kind of just like compound type of beats are the ones that are up to interpretation. So Take Me Out to the Ball Game is a compound type beat. It's made up of like kind of more than one. Kind of. The chart that they give is, I'll write the chart real quick here. They have simple and duple. Oh, my bad. They have simple and compound. They have a duple, a triple, and a quadruple. So a simple duple is like just 1, 2, 1, 2, 1, 2, 1, 2. A simple triple is simply 1, 2, 3, 2, 2, 3, 4, 2. That's actually wrong. A simple triple is just 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3. It's straightforward. A simple quadruple is 1, 2, 3, 4, 1, 2, 3, 4. Just straight up. Simple is simple. Now, a compound basically means that the thing is made up. It's a duple rhythm or a triple rhythm or a quadruple rhythm made up of triplets. A compound duple is when you have a duple beat, 1, 2, 1, 2, 1, 2, but it's made up of triplets. 1 tate, 2 tate, 3 tate, 4 tate, 1 tate, 2 tate, 3 tate, 4 tate, excuse me. 1 tate, 2 tate, 1 tate, 2 tate. So this is like the example that we had above. This is kind of like 6/8. It is 6/8 actually. It is 6/8. A triple, a compound triple is a triple meter made up of triplets. So this would be like 9/8. This is like those slow, I forgot what they're called, like R&B, slow soul songs. 1, 2, 3, 2, 2, 3, 2, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3, 2, 2, 3, 3, 2, 3. You'll hear a lot of Alicia Keys songs like that. Bum, 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 2, 2, 3, 3, 2. Bum, 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 2, 2, 3, 3, 2, 3. It's like a slow triplet waltz, a triplet within a triplet. These types of songs are the coolest in my opinion. These are so cool. These are so fun and cool. Quadruple triplets. The next is the quadruple triplets, which is basically 12/8. So, as you can imagine, that's 4 groupings of triplets. So if you have a quadruple beat, 1, 2, 3, 4, a little bit slower. 1, 2, 3, 4, 1, 2, 3, 4. 1 lale, 2 lale, 3 lale, 4 lale, 1 lale, 2 lale, 3 lale, 4 lale. A lot of soul songs are in this pattern too. A lot of metal songs are in this pattern. It's a really cool one. It's really cool. In my opinion, not as cool as 9/8 because 9/8 is kind of an odd feeling type of beat. It's not just 4 on the floor. Quadruple in 12/8, a compound meter like that feels really fun. It feels really fun. Now, they're trying to get you to call it simple duple or simple triple or simple quadruple or compound duple, compound triple, compound quadruple. Ultimately, I found as I go further in my musical progression, it's important to understand the difference between simple and compound, but you will just end up calling it 6/8, 9/8, 12/8 anyway. I never really refer to anything called compound quadruple, but it's important to know the distinction. Next up is simple time signatures. So they want to tell you about time signatures, and then they want to tell you why they distinguish between simple time signatures and compound time signatures. It's pretty easy, but they kind of make it convoluted a little bit. Now, we actually ran into this problem earlier. So simple time signatures are simple, obviously. It's like 2/4, 4/4, 4/8. And what they'll tell you in earlier music courses is it's kind of like the top note is how many beats in a measure. The bottom note is what note gets the beat. So, okay, how many beats in a measure? 2. Bink, bink. What note gets the beat? 4. So in 2/4, we have 2 fourth notes. All right. In 4/4, we have 4 fourth notes, quarter notes, whatever you want to call them. In 4/8, we have 4 eighth notes. Okay, all well and good. The problem occurs, it's the same problem that we ran into up here when I listed this 2/4 measure right here. The 2/4 measure in, I forgot what song we were doing. I think it was Amazing Grace or Take Me Out to the Ball Game. So the problem with that, you can see right away. When I put 2/4 here, it was like, like there's definitely 2 beats, but they're triplets. So how many beats in a measure? What kind of note gets the beat? When you have a compound rhythm like this, it kind of throws a monkey wrench in that whole thing. So what I like to think of is instead of how many beats in a measure, what note gets the beat, it's how many of what note. It makes it way simple. How many? And what kind of note? Well, we got 12/8. That means there's 12 eighth notes. Wow. We got 6/8. That means there's 6 eighth notes. Wow. We got 2/4. That means there's 2 quarter notes. Wow. You feel? It's way easier to say how many of what note than when you think about how many beats in a measure and what kind of note gets the beat. It's like such a mouthful, dude. It's too much. And this will fix the problem. So when you have 6/8, when you have 6/8, that means that it looks like this: 6 eighth notes. Bingo boingo. But is there really 6 beats? Because when you say how many beats in a measure, what kind of note gets the beat? So you're telling me that this top note, there's 6 beats in a measure. Is there really 6 beats in a measure? Are there really 6 beats in a measure? No, there are not. That's why there's a distinction between compound time signatures and simple time signatures. Simple time signatures are simple. Compound time signatures are made up of triplets. So when I see 6/8, this is actually a duple rhythm. This is a strong beat, and this is a strong beat. You got the 1, and you got the 2. There's not 6 beats in this bar. There's 6 eighth notes, but not 6 beats. So when you hear people say, how many beats in the measure? What kind of note gets the beat? They're wrong. Wrong. Excuse me, you're wrong? How's my Donald Trump? Wrong? You're fired. I'm firing that phrase. How many beats in a measure? What kind of note gets the beat? No, it's how many notes of what beat? How many of those kind of notes? 6 eighth notes. And once you understand the difference between compound and simple time signatures, all the shit just falls right into place. Biggity boom, biggity bang. When you see 6/8, there's only one way it could be divided. Maybe you'll find it like this. Maybe. Into 3 different groupings. But is that really 6/8? No, it's not. It's 3/4. It's a simple triple versus a compound duple. See what I'm saying, boys? See what I'm saying? Use that noggin. Use that noggin. Simple and compound time signatures. It's an important distinction. You'll definitely see interplay between these in the same song, and they won't tell you that they're changing the time signature. They won't tell you that they're changing from a compound to a simple. A lot of times in Bach, he will play this 3/4 rhythm, and then he'll change it to a 6/8 compound rhythm based on the way that he's writing. He'll even bar the notes differently to show you, but he won't change. He won't go to the trouble of writing this in for you, this 6/8. He won't go to the trouble of that because it's something that should be known inside. It should be felt in here and known in here. All right? So know your difference between simple and compound time signatures. Simple time signatures are divided in 2s and 4s and whatever. Compound time signatures divide the beat by 3. And so, because it has triplets in it, you will find time signatures that are multiplied by 3. So the most common time signatures are 2, 3, and 4. Let's say 2, 4, 3, 4, and 4, 4. Whatever. The bottom note isn't important right now. We're looking at the top note. 2, 3, and 4. Multiply all those by 3. You'll get 6, 4, 9, 4, and 12, 4. Again, the bottom note is not important. The top note is what we're looking at. So when you see compound time signatures always begin with a 6, a 9, or a 12. Simple as pie. Simple as pie. Compound time signatures are 6, 9, and 12. Just like that. Simple time signatures are 2, 3, and 4. Boom. That's it, boys. And remember what I tell you about these time signatures, how to figure them out. It's how many of what note. That's simple. How many of what note? 4, 4? You have 4 fourth notes? Awesome. 12, 8. You have how many of what note? You have 12 eighth notes? Awesome. Oh, 12 is one of the compound time signatures because it's multiplied by 3? Awesome. Make up some shit. 56 over 128. Oh, you have how many of what note? You have 56 128th notes? Awesome. It's that simple. It's that simple, boys. So, that's time signatures. The last thing I'll say before we kind of move on. It kind of fits because it's like a transitional kind of material. It'll transition nicely. So, these compound time signatures, 6, 9, and 12. 6 whatever, 9 whatever, and 12 whatever. Let's call them 8. Let's say there's 6, 8, 9, 8, and 12, 8. What we talked about in the beginning of the chapter are dots. So in 6, 8, you will find, because it's a duple compound, you can find 2 dots. The notes are dotted because this 6, 8 kind of looks like this if you break it down into 6 eighth notes. So when you have dotted notes that get the beat, that is where this comes in handy. So this could even be looking like this. A quarter note and an eighth note tied together. A quarter note and an eighth note tied together. But why would you do that when you could just use dots? Same thing for 9/8. Same exact thing for 9/8. Just one more. Same exact thing for 12/8. Just one more. Got 4 beats because it is a quadruple meter. Quadruple. And what kind of meter is it? It's a compound meter. Compound, what does that mean? It's got triplets in it. Very simple. So, you make it a dotted rhythm. You remember with the half note, how when I dotted it and I tried to fit it in a bar, whatever, needs one more line. Whatever. Actually, you don't need one more line. I'm dumb. Boom. When you try to fit a quarter note in a bar of 4/4, when you try to fit a dotted half note in a bar of 4/4 that's common time, you end up with one extra beat. So that means this is only taking up 3 beats. This is only taking up 3 beats. So these dots, a single dotted note like that, should be screaming to you, compound time signature. I'm a compound time signature. If you see this 4 quarter notes with dots on them, or if you see this quarter note tied to an 8th note, quarter note tied to an 8th note over and over and over again, that should be screaming to you, compound time signature. It should be screaming, I'm special. Notice me. Now, going back to kind of what we said about obscuring the beat. Remember, what they want you to show the beat. If it's in 4/4, each note should lie on the beat. They want you to show the beat. If you got something like this, they'll yell at you for some reason. If it's in 4/4. Now, there is a place for this. Like I said, when you're implying 3 plus 3 plus 2 over 4, or so I guess you could call it 6 plus 2 over 4. Yes, there is a time and a place for this. The same way that Bach will switch from compound to simple meter in the middle of a song without necessarily telling you, you should be aware that when you obscure the beat, you're trying to imply something. Now, they give a little bit about durational symbols and incorrect versus correct ways to perform them. The first 2 are the ones that I run into the most. I don't really run into stuff that's in 12/16 that often, or 4/2, like written poorly, like that. They want you to fix it like this. I hope y'all can see that. I'll write out the first 2. They don't want you. So if you're in 3/4, excuse me, I'll give my own example for the first one. If you're in like 4/4, and I see this one in jazz all the time. It pisses me off so bad. When you see this, you'll see this right here. An 8th note, and then a quarter note, and then an 8th note. And then an 8th note again, and then a quarter note, and then an 8th note. And you're like, what? And they'll space it out in a way that's confusing as well. They won't space it properly. They won't put it like this. 8th quarter, 8th, 8th, quarter, 8th. They won't leave appropriate spaces between the quarter notes. They'll do some close-up zoom crap like this. And this is the most frustrating to me. Ba-da, da-da-da. Da-da, da-da-da, 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 da-da, da-da-da. I think that's what it is. Dun, 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 dun. Dun, 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 dun. Dun, 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 dun. It's just the most frustrating thing. Like, I get what they're trying to do here, but you are totally obscuring the beat here. You're totally obscuring the beat. Just because these guys are worth a half note and these guys are worth a half note, you're obscuring the beat from me, guys. I hate when you do that. Can you not go? And I get why they do it, because they're jazz, man, and they got to be efficient with the lines, man. But this should really, if I'm being honest and anal about it, just like the way classical musicians are going to be anal about it, it should be written like this. Hold up. 1, 2, 3, 4. Boom, 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 boom. And they should tie these. And tie these. Bum bum ba bum bum ba bum 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 ba bum bum ba bum bum ba bum bum. That's how they should do it. And even this, you know what? Even this is wrong. Is wrong. It's freaking wrong because jazz is swung. Jazz is swung. And nowadays, you'll find all sorts of computers. They'll tell you that a swing rhythm or whatever is just a percentage of an eighth note swung or whatever. You know what? Bollocks to that, because swing rhythm originally, the classic swing rhythm is made up of a compound time signature. Compound. But you know jazz, they gotta be efficient, and nobody wants to write in 12/8 and have ties everywhere, even though that's what it is. Jazz is actually 1 2 3 2 2 3 3 2 3 4 2 3 dun da dun da dun da dun da dun da dun da dun. And sure, you can swing a rhythm and have it technically be more than a freaking... I'm running out of room here. Let's go up here. You can technically swing a rhythm, and technically it doesn't always have to be a perfect triplet swing like this. It doesn't always have to be a triplet swing like that. They will shift this note over a little bit, a few percent, or they'll shift it over the other way to make it like a shuffle or whatever the fuck you call it. It's so stupid. A percentage of the beat. It's so stupid. Like, how are you going to measure a percentage of the beat? What, are you going to write it on top of the sheet music? Like, oh, like you'll see this. You'll see when things are swung, they'll be like this equals this. But when you see shuffle and all that, swing, swung, whatever. They'll write swing, and then they'll notate exactly how they want the visualized eighth notes to be played. But you'll never see a shuffle with these things and having like, oh, we don't want you to swing it 66.666% of the way, which is 2/3. We want it to swing 58.75%. No, they will never, ever write it like that. You know why? Because it's freaking felt. It's felt. It's felt. It's not a math thing. And you see all these computers, they try to approximate it in the DAWs and all the digital audio workstations. They'll try to approximate it by giving you a percentage of swing. You know what? When you hear all those old swing songs and the percentage of swing is not really a proper triplet, that's because they're feeling it. And you know what? You'll notice that in those songs, the percentage of swing shifts throughout the song because it's felt. Jazz is felt, all right? Oh boy, we are diving in a rabbit hole today, boys. Jazz. Let me tell you something about jazz music. See, jazz music. Let me tell you something about jazz. All right, jazz. when you have this triplet, this is the quintessential swing rhythm. Eighth note equals triplet, whatever the hell. But they don't want to write it in 12/8. They don't want to write every single note like this, and then like this, and then they'll have like a dotted. They don't want to have dotted notes everywhere. They don't want to have that. Why? Like, why? I don't know why. Like, I know why. It's because they're freaking lazy. It's because they're all on that jazz cigarette bullcrap. I know why. Hardly any of them ever write anyway. They write like some basic scribbles on a chart. We're going to go from E major 7 to freaking A major 7. And they'll write it like this. They won't write E major 7 sharp 9. They won't write it like that. They'll just go E triangle and then play whatever the hell you want after. It's crazy. It's crazy. It's crazy how lazy jazz is. Because it's cool to be lazy, man. You just feel it. You know what I mean? If you forget the words, you just make up some words, right? If you forget the chords, you just make up some chords, right? Just play 2 5s, man. Just play 2 5s. Freaking jazz. All right. Jazz, it's awesome, okay? Jazz is awesome. But the laziness that permeates that industry is its own Achilles heel. They say jazz is dead or whatever the hell, or jazz is struggling to stay alive. No, man. Jazz is never written. It's never written properly. It's never notated properly. They just record it, man. They just play live, man. You know what I mean? They just play when they feel, man. And if it's recorded, it's recorded. And if it's lost to the wind, it's lost to the wind, man. That's why jazz is dead, okay? Because there's not a bunch of people friggin' over-analyzing it and obsessively and compulsively notating it to every single dot and rhythm. Like, you see classical music, you see hundreds of different people notating the same classical piece. They're writing the same shit over and over. The same shit that somebody else wrote. With jazz, you'll find like a few scrappy old charts. And you'll see like the same people playing like the same chart, like Autumn Leaves or something. Great song, but like you'll see like so many different versions of it, and they'll all be like the most lazily written thing you'll ever see in your life. The reason they don't write 12/8, and it's actually ridiculous, it's because they want to stick with just writing a common time, and then they got 1, 2, 3, 4. Bum, 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 bum. And then if they need to divide it, bum, ba-dum, 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 they'll go like this. The 8th notes will be swung, man. And what's wild to me, what's the wildest to me, they'll actually play. They won't even admit that they're playing in compound time. They'll be playing triplets. They'll be like, all of these are triplets. Triple it, triple it, triple it, triple it. But it's swung. It's an insult to how many people spend time creating these systems, taking the time to learn them and all this stuff. And then you'll just see these jazz players. These jazz players will play this stuff. And then when the triplets come in, when they actually have to notate the triplets, this is how lazy they are. They'll come in to something that says it's swung already. So they'll say something is this is equal to this. They'll say that it's equal to this. And then when the triplets come in, they'll go ahead and write it out in triplets. They'll go out and write it in compound time signature anyway, when there's no other way. And then you see that, and you see this, and they won't even have the decency to put a 3 on top of there to let you know that it's a triplet. Some people will do that. Some people say, hey, there's a triplet. Some people will just leave it. They'll leave it. Isn't that annoying? So you'll see stuff like this. You'll see stuff like this right here, where you'll be coming across a rhythm, and you'll see for no reason that this is why I'm including this when I'm talking about obscuring the beat. You'll have 3 eighth notes that are beamed, and then 2 eighth notes that are beamed, and then 3 eighth notes that are beamed, and then 2 eighth notes that are beamed. But the ones that are only 2 eighth notes are swung. So it's kind of like, so those are obviously different rhythms. Triplet, 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 1, 2, 3, 1, 3, 1, 2, 3, 1, 3. Those are obviously different, but they'll write them with the same values. They're all eighth notes. They're all, hey, we're jazz players. We don't give a shit about proper writing. They're all eighth notes. They're all eighth notes. And it's so fucking confusing. It's so damn confusing when you run into that stuff and you'll be like, so is it, this is why not obscuring the beat is so important. You'll run into this, and if you didn't know any better, you'd play all these in a row and you'd be like, what the hell? Are there 10 beats in this measure? This shit was written in 4/4. And yet here I'm seeing 10/8. Is this a measure written in 5? No, it's jazz players being lazy. Hey, obscuring everything. We're too cool to write down stuff. Why is jazz dead again? Jeez, man. Okay, yeah. So don't obscure stuff, guys. For the love of God, if you're gonna write stuff down, be good about your writing. Don't obscure stuff. Look at me saying be good about your writing, and I'm writing all this scribble scrabble. This non-legible scribble scrabble. All right. So, on to the last section, just stuff about beaming. I don't think I'm gonna need my guitar for any of this. They just go into talking about proper beaming, tuplets, and how to properly write a note head with a line. So they talk a bit about tuplets and beaming in the same kind of paragraph. Now, this, I'm going to try to keep it as short as possible here. You'll find all sorts of tuplets. You'll find 2 tuplets. You'll find 3 tuplets. You'll find 4 tuplets, 5 tuplets, 6 tuplets, 7 tuplets, sometimes 8, not necessarily 8. Actually, the 8 is rare. You might as well just put in 16th notes at that point. It depends on what kind of meter you're in. You'll find 9. I've found 9 tuplets often. Put little bars on all these. So I found 10 tuplets before. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. They'll have all these notes. And then they'll be like, boom, all this is 10. You play these 10 notes in the duration of whatever, a bar or however many beats they're trying to cover. The most common by far is 3s, and then I've seen 2s. So they'll use triplets, basically, triplets, 3 tuplets, when you're in a duple meter, like 4/4. And they'll use 2 tuplets. 2 tuplets? Yes, 2 tuplets. When you're in a triple meter, like 3/4. Excuse me, a compound meter, like 6/8. So if you're in 6/8, and everything's looking like this, bum 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 bum. A 2 tuplet is technically just 2/16 notes kind of bad flagging. 2/16 notes, but dotted. So when you come across this, it'll be like bum 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 da 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 da. Actually, that ain't true either. 1 2 3 2 2 3 1 2 1 2 3 1 2 3 1 2 1 2 3 1 2 3 1 2 1 2 3 1 2 3 1 2. You're dividing this into an equal amount right in half. It's right after the second note. Actually, I don't think this is even 16th. No, it should be an 8th note. It's technically an 8th note with a dot. My bad, boys. It's been a while since I used 2 tuplets. Because typically you just write it out. You just write out the actual rhythm that you want. But if you're lazy, you like jazz players are, hey! If you're lazy, like these dang jazz players, you write out 2 tuplets and 3 tuplets. Okay? I find that 3 tuplets has more of a place because it's pretty easy to just write, 2/8 notes with dots on them. But sometimes people will miss the dots. It's just visually, if you want to mark like, yo, these are grouplets, you will force visually the reader to notice that it's a grouping of 2. In 4/4, you'll see like triplets. And a word about these, triplets and 6-tuplets, sextuplets, whatever you want to call them, and 9 tuplets. So the thing about even number tuplets is that they can be notated with dots. But with 3 tuplets, if you're going from 8th, and you'll see this, if you're going from like, we'll make a big old measure, 4/4, and you're going from little 8th notes like this, and all of a sudden, at the end, you have a tuplet, a 3 tuplet, a triplet. You'll see that the beaming structure is the same. It's still 8th notes, which is kind of confusing. Like, they're not really 8th notes. They're triplet beamed 8th notes. They have a different value. So that's what I was talking about when I see these jazz players incorrectly beam stuff to imply certain things while being really, sparse with their notation. That beam structure can screw you up a lot. So when you have a triplet of 8th notes, the 8th notes are actually shorter than a true 8th note. It's pretty confusing, and I don't think there's any good way to notate that, like any proper way to notate that. But just know that you're going to run into that. So if you have, let's say you're in 4/2, and you have quarter, 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 and then a triplet that needs to fill up one of these beats, which is a half note, you're going to find 3 quarter notes in there. Even though visually that is confusing as hell. Because you're going to read this and you're going to be like, wait a minute, 3 quarter notes is a beat and a half. It's not one beat. Well, there's no good way to fix it, so that's how it is. Triplets it is. You could, I guess, you could write it as like, no, you couldn't even. You couldn't even write it as like a weird dotted eighth thing. You couldn't even do that. Dotted eighth, dotted eighth, dotted eighth. No, it won't work like that. I believe dotted eighth plus, yeah, this is adding an extra 16th where there shouldn't be one. When you try to write it as 3 dotted eighths. That won't work. You can, with an even number tuplet, like 2, 4, I think 6, and 8, possibly 12. I mean 10. Probably not 10. No, you know what? I don't even think for 6. If it's divisible by 4 or 2 or something like that, if it works out even, I think maybe if it's an exponent of 2, I forgot what the rule is, but 2, 4, and 8, those are the ones that you can notate out the triplets. For other things, in metal, I've seen a lot of people use 5 tuplets in rock and roll and stuff like that because they just feel it, man. They'll just stick 5 notes or 7 notes into a sweeping whatever. Especially when you just memorize. That's what it is. When you just memorize a pattern and you play that pattern as fast as you can within a beat and you just try to fill that beat with a pattern. If that pattern happens to have 5 notes or 7 notes in it, guess what? It's a 5 tuplet or it's a 7 tuplet. That's pretty much the only or a 10 tuplet. That's pretty much the only reason that I've seen 5, 7, and 10. It's not really proper music writing. Like, what I mean proper music writing is stuff that you would write out before you even play it. Stuff that you can write from your head. Typically, when I see 5 tuplets, 7 tuplets, 11 tuplets, weird amount of tuplets, that screams to me that this was played on an instrument first and then notated later. Because you can notate 2 tuplets. You can notate 4 tuplets and 3 tuplets. But you can't notate freaking 10 tuplets, man. All right? That's enough about tuplets. Try to divide the even ones if you can. It's good for your brain. Divide them into dotted whatever tuplets when you're in a compound meter. Other than that, just feel free to write out the tuplet groupings. I know I screamed up and down about how it's lazy and all that stuff. It's not lazy. It has its use. Feel free to use them. Don't overuse it, for the love of God. There is something that I've seen that I will say before we move on. If something just shifts into like triplets for a long time, or any type of Maybe it's a tremolo, where sometimes you'll see it written like this, with like a bunch of lines intersecting the flag bars. They won't bother writing out the rest of the little notes. If you see like triplet over and over and over and over and over and over, this is kind of why jazz does what it does. It's not super late. It's kind of classical music did it first by getting rid of this stuff. Instead of writing triplet over and over and over, they'll write triplet for like the first bar, and then they'll write sim, like simile, or similar. It's an Italian word or whatever. Just like I said, like way back then. It's not, all right, it's not lazy writing. It's efficient writing. But I said it. It's not lazy, it's efficient. So next time, when you don't make your bed every morning and you're sitting there and your mom yells at you, hey, why didn't you make your bed this morning? Say, I'm not lazy, Mom. I'm being efficient because I'm just going to jump in the bed later. Why do you have laces on your shoes? Why do you have Velcro? It's not being lazy, it's being efficient. Who needs to tie shoes? Why don't you change your underwear? Well, they're going to get dirty anyway. I'm not being lazy, I'm being efficient. I'm being efficient with my toothpaste and my soap. I'm not using them so I can save. Oh, man. Oh, man. Whatever. Y'all get the picture. It's not lazy, it's efficient. So, they talk about beaming and all that. They talk about how basically you should only beam things. You should only link the beams when the notes require their flags to be tied. If the notes don't have no flags, i.e., if it's not an eighth note or more, it's not an eighth note, 16th note, 32nd note, don't bother beaming them. Just like up here with these quarter notes, if they're just quarter notes and you need to like put a bracket on them, you can put a bracket on them, but for the love of God, don't beam the quarter notes. Do not beam the quarter notes. Like way back here. Where were we way back here? Yeah, any note with a flag. So if you got an eighth note with a flag, a 16th note with the little double flag, 32nd note with the triple flag, and so on. 3, 4, and then 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Unless they got a flag on it, for the love of God, don't beam the notes together. Please. That should kind of go without saying. But there's so many different beaming things. I think I went over some way in the beginning. Like, if you have 16th notes, let's say like this, 2, 3, 4, 1, 2, 3, 4, 1, 2, 3, 4, 1, 2, 3, 4. Okay, you can beam all of them together like that or whatever. But sometimes it's better, and sometimes it's not better. Sometimes it's more confusing. But sometimes it's better to just beam them like this. Every 4. And you can leave a little gap. It doesn't have to be a big space. It doesn't have to be spaced out like that. But you can leave a little gap to let people know, like, hey, these are groupings of 4. And you don't have to write 4 on top of all these. You don't have to. You could, but you don't have to. It's just letting people know, hey, this is a beat. This is beat 1. This is beat 2. This is beat 3. This is beat 4. So this kind of beaming is useful, but it can also be confusing because sometimes when I read this, I'm like, oh, there's a gap here. So that means a different type of note is coming up. Nope. Nope. Try to zoom in a bit. It's like sometimes you're like, oh, is there a quarter note that's coming up? Nope. It's all the same. So sometimes this can be visually confusing. Sometimes this can be visually helpful. And the last few things that they mention is the line. I forgot what it's called. The stem. The stem of the note. So when you have notes on a staff, try to make this staff real good. When you have notes on a staff, they talk about how when you have a single staff and you have a note above or below the middle line, the the stem should not protrude extensively upward or downward for spacing reasons. Now, with the grand staff and multi-part writing, all this crap goes kind of out the window. But they say, like for example, if you have a G up here, the stem of this note should not protrude upwards. That's wrong. You should put your G note with the stem downward. So that if you have a bunch of notes here, whatever they are, they all fit within the margin. They all fit within the margins. So anything above this middle line, the stems go down. Anything below this middle line, the stems go up. Up. And then the B, the line, or it's not always a B. The D, sometimes in grand staff, it could be anything, whatever kind of. If you have this middle line, the stem can go up or down. And for the love of God, put the stem on the correct side. A note goes diagonally. It's kind of like if you have your right hand and you draw a line. You just kind of whisk your hand to the side. Boop. That's how you remember. Boop. A note doesn't go this way. It goes diagonally from the top left to the bottom right. Boink, 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 boink. And a stem goes, I'm not really sure a good way to classify this rule, but if the stem is going down, it should be on the left side. If the stem is going up, it should be on the right side. The note is flippable by 180 degrees. You should not write a note like this. Okay? That's wrong. A note should not be written like this. That's wrong. A note should not be written like this. Wrong. And imagine if you put a flag on that. That shit looks wrong too. Imagine if it was the other way. Imagine if it was like this. That's wrong. Imagine if it was like this and it was like that. Well, wow, now the note's backwards. Hey, the note's backwards. That's wrong. And what's wild is you'll see this crap everywhere in graphic design because they don't know nothing about music. And that's fine. They don't have to know nothing about music. But boy, is that a pet peeve when I see notes written like this in like symbols. Because to me, if you're going to have that, like a lot of times like on a backpack or something or on a shirt, you'll have like these notes written like this. And then that's implying, oh man, I love music. Look, I got musical notes on my shirt. I got these musical notes on my shirt, but they're backwards. I'm going to be like, bro, oh, so you love music, but you don't know how to write music at all, do you? You've never actually seen written music before, huh? So, for the love of God, make your notes correct. The flags, they always go to the right, as in like further down in time. It's like the wind is blowing the flags. That's what I wanted to say about the rests earlier. So when you have a note with a flag on it, it's like time is blowing the flag in that direction. And when you have a rest, the flags, quote unquote flags, on the rests go in the opposite direction. That's almost like a symbol to me that the wind has stopped. You have stopped blowing into the clarinet or the saxophone. You know what I mean? In my case, I'm somewhat of a vocalist. So when I see a regular note, I know I'm blowing air outward. When I see the flag going inward, I know I have to breathe. Because typically when I see a rest in vocal music, that means take this opportunity to breathe. For the love of God, breathe. Breathe, man, breathe. Especially in vocal music. They don't give you that much spots to breathe in vocal music. So when you see a rest like that, it's like, take whatever air you can get in. You're actually like sucking the flag in the opposite direction. That's just how I think about it. So yeah, flags go in a certain direction. That goes in a certain direction. Yes. And the final thing is when you have a stav, for the love of God, try your best to keep the stems 1 octave in length, a little bit longer than 1 octave in length. That's how long they're supposed to be. Just a touch longer than 1 octave. So if it's starting on this G here, the top of this stem should go just barely above the next G. When I see music and it's written like this, it just looks weird. It just looks weird, especially if you got like like bass notes, right? You got like bass notes with little teeny tiny stems. Sometimes I get it. For spacing reasons, you're running out of room on the paper, whatever, you know. But for the most part, if you can, keep your notes 1 octave in length. If it starts on an A, it goes up to about the A on the ledger line, a little bit above. It just keeps everything nice and uniform. That way you don't have flags starting at different heights. It's still legible with the flags on the different heights. But you know, you want to, if these are all Bs, they're all Bs. Why would you put the flags on different heights? Now it looks like the contour of the line is going up and then down, like the melodic line is going da 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 or whatever. But it's not. It's just all Bs. Da 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 da. You want to have some kind of consistency when you're writing. So that's what this whole chapter is about. Consistency in your writing, the beam structure. The rest of this chapter is just like self-tests, which are really good. I'm not going to, I mean, you can go ahead and take a look, but like, it's, honestly, if you just get the workbook, or just buy the book for $2 the actual book, you can go ahead and fill in all this stuff and spend as much time as you want rather than me just sitting here showing you all this stuff. As in, I mean, showing you the problems, the unfinished examples, the work problems that they try to give you. It's better if you want to actually work on paper with this stuff, go ahead and get yourself a copy of this book and just write in the book. Get the workbook and follow along with the corresponding self-tests. We're on 2.5 right now. So go along and write it out. It really does help. It really does help, I promise. But if you don't want to sit there and write it, I totally get you. You're on YouTube right now. You ain't doing no homework. Just think about the stuff that I showed you about writing, the do's and don'ts, the little pet peeves. It should get in your brain, especially the next time you read music. You'll see people making all these mistakes. You'll see people obscuring the beat. You'll see people writing the notes wrong. You'll see people using the weird time signatures. You'll see people putting weird groupings of notes in there. So you'll see people putting 2 quarter rests or 2 eighth rests, especially computers. Freaking computers ruin everything, man. Because they do all this shit automatically and they don't really understand efficiency or what humans are trying to read. They'll put 2 eighth rests when they could just be using a quarter rest. You'll see all these people making these mistakes, and as much as I blabber on about correct writing and keeping your stem lengths in octave and height, keeping the stems that are above the middle line going down, and all that stuff, you'll still see people making all these mistakes. What you can do to fight this is stop making mistakes yourself. Understand the difference between compound and duple meter. Understand all this jibber jabber that I wrote down, all this stuff here. Only you can prevent forest fires. Remember that. Only you can prevent dumpster fires of writing. They told us in class that they're kind of trying to make us all little composers. It's not a composition class, but they're trying to make a little guy pop into your heart and say, "Hey, I'm a composer now. I got a composer's hat on. I know a little bit about this stuff. I know how to conduct. I know how to write lines on staff. I know how to write notes properly." That's what they're trying to do, especially in this chapter about rhythm. Hope you learned a lot about rhythm today. I hope you learned a lot about writing today. The next chapter will go on to talk about triads and seventh chords. So now that we're done talking about kind of the X and Y axis of singular notes, now they're going to stack notes on top of each other. They're going to build upon all of that interval stuff that I was talking about in the beginning of this video and in the last chapter. They're going to talk about intervals. And what's really cool is when they start showing you the functions. I'm not sure if it's in this chapter, but in figured bass. If you don't know what figured bass is, or if you do know what figured bass is and it scares you, don't be scared. Figured bass is one of the most beautiful things. It's beautiful. It's such a good notation system. Figured bass is beautiful. And I don't care what anybody says. Figured bass is amazing. Intervals are amazing, and figured bass is amazing. All right, chapter 3, we're going to introduce you to chords, triads, and seventh chords, and figured bass. So, catch me in the next chapter. If you liked this video, like, share, comment, and subscribe. No, but for real, subscribe or whatever. I'm going to be coming out with again, we on chapter 3. I'm going to go all the way to chapter 28, boys. All the way. We going through this whole book. We ripping out detail by detail, boys. Detail by detail to give you free course in music theory. Free college course. I'm going to be going not only detail by detail, I'm going to be diving deep. And I'm going to give you tips and tricks and do's and don'ts that I learned in college. Not just in the book, but in the college classes. From other students, from other teachers. I'm going to be giving you gold, boys. I'm going to keep giving you gold. Stay tuned. Stick around. Sorry these videos are so long. Actually, I'm not sorry they're so long. I hope you stick around and learn something. I hope you listen to these things like an audiobook. I hope they're soothing and they make you think, and sometimes they make you laugh. And I hope they make you learn. It's way better than them TikTok short-ass videos. All right. We Sonamor. We signing out. We love music. Catch you next episode, Chapter 3, Triads and 7th Chords.